It's raining, it's pouring, it's time to make some root vegetable soup. It's one of my favorite soups. It's very easy to make. Total prep time, I'm guessing about 5 minutes, not including the time that the soup is cooking, of course. To make the soup, we will need the following: a pot. We will need some vegetables to make the soup with. So I like to make it with sweet potato, a few potatoes, some carrots, an onion, and some lentils, which provide an automatic upgrade to every soup you make. Also an automatic upgrade, cheating by using some good vegetable bouillon. A chopping board is a good idea, a good knife is a good idea, and a squisher. There are different ways to make the soup more stew-like. Some people like to put it in the blender. I used to do that, but then you have to pour hot soup and blend it and pour it back, and it's this big mess, and you have to wash this thing. So some people use immersion blenders, also pretty good. I didn't want to have one extra appliance in my house, so I'm using a smoosher. I used to do it just with a fork, and then I just got tired of it. So the vegetables need to be washed. Washing the vegetable is about as complicated as all right. The onion is the only thing that requires any kind of peeling. I'll show you how that goes. So when I peel an onion, I like to take off the two ends. 1, 2. I cut it in half. And then each half I can take off the peel pretty easily. There's a little bit of peel left here. I wouldn't normally care, but since this is for the world, I'll chop it off. Okay, all this will go into my little compost bin. Done. I slice I slice the onion with the grain, as it were. Right, this saves me some cutting because now the rings will separate on their own, so I'll just slice it again this way, and all the layers will separate themselves. Pieces are about this big. They become very soft and very mushy in the soup, so I'm not too worried about it. Okay, so that's the onion. Carrot, I'll split it. I cut off the ends. I did this before I realized I'm gonna make this movie. My apologies, but usually I slice off the ends because they're a little dirtier and harder. I put them in the compost bin. I'll slice it lengthwise and then chop down. My chopping board is full, so I'll transfer it into the pot. I know that different people do different things. Some people like to fry the onion first and add spices and things, and I frankly don't have the patience. I'm good enough with 80% awesome. If it takes me, 30 minutes less to do it. So I'm cutting, again, all the pieces are about bite size roughly. We're gonna mush them up later on. So they're not going to remain like this, but some pieces will escape the squisher probably. So I just want to make sure that they're a comfortable size to eat, but they will be super soft once they cook anyway. Sweet potato is a little rougher. I'm also going to take off the edges just as I don't like them. And I'm not going to try to slice the whole thing. It just seems like a lot to me. So I'm going to cut off a few more manageable blocks that I can work with. Generally, I try to lay stuff that I cut on a flat edge of it so that it doesn't flip around. You know, if I did it like this, it would be hard. So okay, the prep is basically done at this point. Now we're just going to cook it for a bit and squish it, and then it'll be soup. So this is what it looks like in the pot. We can add lentils. These are green lentils. You can use whatever lentils you want, or as much as you think you like. Perfect. Okay, next thing, add water. Otherwise it won't be soup. So add water until it covers everything up. Good. Take it to the stove. Put it on high. We'll cover it with the lid, and then I'm just going to let it cook. It'll cook for about probably, 15 minutes before it boils, so I'll come back in 15 minutes and see how things go. Okay, so it's taken more like 20 or 25 minutes for this much water to boil, but it is boiling in earnest now. The vegetables are probably not going to be soft yet, but it is a good enough time to put in the vegetable bouillon. I like to wait until the water is hot because then it just immediately melts off the spoon. Less to clean and also less wasted. So this particular bouillon comes, it's kind of like a jelly. So you just load up a spoon-ish of it, put it in, mix it up. If you have powdered bouillon, you just drop it in and mix it in, however your bouillon comes. So I'll keep mixing it. Okay, good enough. At this point, it's probably not a good idea to cover it and leave it covered because it might spill over. I'm guessing that the starch is creating this kind of foam, and it builds and it becomes this enormous mess. And so I like to do two things. I leave it half covered so that some steam can escape. And I'm also going to lower the temperature, maybe to like middle. And at this point, it can cook, honestly, as much as you want to let it cook, as long as it doesn't burn. If you leave it on for a really long time, you may want to check that the water hasn't totally evaporated. But I'll come back in another maybe 30 minutes and poke at the veggies and see how they're doing. And if they're soft, and if they're not, then we wait a little bit longer, and then we come back. And when we come back and they're soft, okay, so about 30 minutes then, we'll wait. All right, this soup has been cooking for about 30 minutes and continued to bubble vigorously despite the fact that I lowered the heat. Let's see what's going on. Okay, and I can feel the veggies are very, very soft. Here's a potato. It takes no effort to go through any of the vegetables. At this point, they just break. So before I got myself the squisher, I used to just do this part by hand. And the main thing is just to avoid the steam. It works pretty well. It just takes some time, and I got impatient. And so I went and got myself this squisher, which I remembered from my childhood. We would use it to make mashed potatoes, much like this, except now I'm using it to make soup. So, squish. And you can decide, of course, how much actual identifiable vegetable you want in there, how liquid you like your soup to be versus how stewy. You know, if you want it to be more stewy, just leave it on to cook for a little longer. The water will evaporate. If you want it more watery, add some water. But at this point, it's ready to eat. I like mine really quite stewy, and I don't have a particular need to see identifiable pieces of vegetable in there. Some will remain anyway. This is one of those times when it's especially unfortunate that video cannot convey smell. It's a nice smelling soup. So that's really it. The soup is ready. Like you saw, it just takes a little bit of washing vegetables and then chopping them and then putting them in water. They boil for a while. We add the bouillon. They boil for a while. We squish them, and the soup is ready. It keeps really quite well. You can put it in the fridge, whatever you didn't use. Eat it over the next few days. You could even freeze it if you want it. Yeah, that's it.